My experience with DevOps is probably being the end user to now maintainer to now owner of the DevOps. So I've seen the ugly side where I used to curse about DevOps, and I'm now seeing the side when I'm being cursed when the DevOps is not right. So to me, DevOps is right running a airport. You have to be right every time. You have to write, doesn't matter if there's a hailstorm or doesn't matter there is something going on. There are people who have their priorities and they depend upon you. It's that critical as that. Across the function, across the organization, this runs like a lifeline or a nervous system where it has to be ready. If DevOps is not ready, the product doesn't get released, we all understand. If the product has not got released properly, it cannot be rolled back. So the amount of knowledge a DevOps engineer or DevOps professional has to have is how the product goes through, how operations work, what customer is expecting, so on and so forth. I'll stop here, then start. Prasanna, can you share your perspective and then we can go around?
Sure. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, when I was passing by the corridor, someone was asking me, what's the relationship between open source and DevOps? I thought I'll just quickly give my thoughts. How do they relate? If you look at 4 decades of software, software came into existence to help other industries. We never looked at helping ourselves for a long time. And I think it's only the last decade we started looking at, hey, we can also automate our own process. So while it is ironical, at least we have realized now. And when it comes to automating ourselves, it's a cobbler, stitching his own shoes, right? So we have to help ourselves, and open source is one of the best, alignment in that world, right? In that context, I have to, we need to remember Koshuke's support, the creator of Jenkins, in this context, he is like Linus of the open source world. Just a big round of applause for that. Interestingly, I was reading a tweet from him. He was talking about, he said it was a dream come true for me. I'm sitting in an airport and 2 guys sitting next to me are talking about Jenkins and how to fix a problem with Jenkins. It's an amazing story to read. So in that context, where I see DevOps, while we have been consumer of open source, I see a huge gap in how much we consume against how much we contribute. I think in the context of this conference, we should have an eye, and I was telling Divyanshu as well, hey, how much Intel contributes on this. I think we need to kind of start looking at it because maybe there is not an equal share, and we should really commend those guys who stay up every weekend and write these code and fix the issues. Even to the extent the Kubernetes. Do you know how many contributors are there in Kubernetes? Any guesses out here? So we got 2,000 contributors, 80,000 customers. So it's an unfair game, and we kind of trouble them. Of course, there are bigwigs around Google, which is helping, but again, if you look at the edge that we are seeing, with DevOps that we need to support for IoT and others. Again, I was telling Divyanshu, we have 20 contributors to Mender.io. We are seeing that as the standard for IoT, and we have 20 contributors. So I think there is a unequal share. I think in this forum, I wanted to bring out, all of you guys are developers. We need to look at how we can come out of our own comfort zone and start, in our own little way contributing. With that, I'll hand over.
I want to start with the story instead of like giving some idea about what I'm here to talk about. Imagine there is a grocery owner, who sells groceries every day, is actually facing a challenge. This I read from one of the blogs. This person has a choice that every day, either this person can learn how to bicycle, go pick the groceries, or go pick the groceries, like walk and go pick the groceries. If this person walks and picks the groceries, yes, the task gets over within like 10-15 minutes, and that day gets over. But comes next day, the same problem in the morning this person faces. The only way he could break this chain and cut down this 15 minutes of work by to 1 or 2 minutes is just to learn a bicycle. But learning to ride that bicycle is going to take him at least 1 or 2 days of 1 hour of practice every day. DevOps problems in many organizations is generally like this, whether to go and learn this bicycle, how to ride this bicycle, or should I actually keep doing it manually, finish this off so that I can get something out of the door. So yeah, this is how I want to start talking about DevOps.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon everyone. So I think we had a very interesting definition. So when Divyanshu said about an airport, Prasanna was talking about how open source contributes and we need to contribute back, and the example was quite nice. So I want to bring in a slightly different perspective about perspective. So if you see what DevOps or a lot of buzzwords today, another big topic today is design thinking. So what all these things are actually doing is bringing in different perspectives. So DevOps is basically getting the ops team, now it's DevSecOps, right? So the security team, the development teams to come together, understand each other's problems, challenges, and then automate it in a way that they fit together. I think that's the beauty of DevOps. So if you look at it, take a step back and look at it, it's nothing new. So all the very successful teams from the past, they were always practicing something on similar lines. Maybe it was not formally called as DevOps, but a practice like this always existed. So a few years back, I read somewhere, I'm not sure how true it is, but I read somewhere that Amazon makes a release every 11 seconds. And that's like amazing. So if they can do it, I don't see a reason as to why smaller companies, smaller teams just can't do it, right? So it's, as I think Vinod was mentioning, it's just that question of learning, getting people together and getting those perspectives to come together, which is the key for DevOps. So I would like to start off on that note.
So I think it's a good introduction, and you heard different perspectives, right? Where criticality, the imbalance in the type of expectation and the people supporting it, then how do you automate tasks which are there and you're doing error everywhere, then the cultural aspect, and then this was there. But one of the key things which I want to call on DevOps and open source is, DevOps, I have been a kernel developer for 13 years. So I was a technical architect in Broadcom. And there was always a debate that proprietary versus this open source. DevOps across the companies, 4 or 5 companies I've seen, and at least 20 odd I talk, open source is the way, that's what they say. Because solution is available. The problem in DevOps is now. Like if there is a release stop now, that's a problem has to be solved. Now, there is no company or no organization in the world who can give you the product now and there except for open source. Because it is there. You can go, download, start playing around. If I want to play with Jenkins, or if I want to play with Ansible or whatever automation, I can just give it that. So DevOps gives you that opportunity. The second important aspect of DevOps and open source, how these two fit together, is the speed of innovation that is needed for DevOps is only matched or mostly matched by speed of open source. Because there are most of the, I think, developers are there. They're doing on their own. They're finding a problem and solving it. So there's a unique combination that exists. Doing in our organization, when I see, probably 90% work is open source. And the engineers who have the talent to take that code, build it themselves, and make it live in no time, they fit this culture. So that's the cultural aspect of DevOps. The other thing which I touched upon, and I will like Prasanna to reflect upon, that coming from JFrog, which is promoting a lot of open source and a lot of innovation in DevOps, how does he see that a new engineer or first person who wants to enter into the DevOps market or DevOps role, what he or she looks up to?
Okay, thanks, Divyanshu. A couple of, to add to what you said, the developer had a handicap, the last 4 decades, because he did not know what to build. Yeah. Right? I think when it came to DevOps, he knew what needed to be built. That's why open source started, working out very well. So coming to, for a new person, what does he look from a DevOps world, right? Now, I think developers will have to look themselves as developers. There is nothing like ops or dev. The whole concept of DevOps was, in the past, we had developers and operations as separate group, they had separate skill set, they had separate everything, and we had a big wall. You've seen most pictures like that. But I think in the new world, everything is code. I think we all know that, from infrastructure to the actual business functionality we build in. So I think everyone should look at how do I code? How do I become a good developer, whichever domain I get into, be it testing, be it deploying, be it security analysis, be it, creating infrastructure. So the only role, I think, that's where full stack developers are picking up steam. Try to build a good skill. I think Vinod was mentioning, I think some of if you look at the ops-centric development, it becomes very script-centric, because they write procedurally because that's how they've been trained for a long time. But not anymore, because now the new net native developers are already, understand the issues around building procedural stuff. So everyone is innovating. I think you should continue to innovate. Don't bother about what exactly I'm going to code on, because everything has an API, everything has a standard. You just follow that and get along. That's
good. So, Sukesh, from your side, if a person enters into a DevOps world, what he or she should expect from the skill perspective? What he should. There's one thing called domain, right? That we all need to know. It's a hardware and then software and then automation. But skill perspective, how he or she sees that.
I find that a very interesting point to talk about, because see, so we were just talking earlier before the session, and I just was remembering. So I've got a few resumes which says they are DevOps engineers, and I was actually wondering what they do, because to me, if somebody is practicing DevOps, right from your developer to your support engineer, they all need to know and they all need to be a DevOps engineer. So if you talk about skill, or the kind of technology stack they need to know. Yes, you have specialists, you have areas like people are good at infra, people are good at probably development, people are good at testing, but all of them are developers. So what you develop is probably a little different, that's all. I would like to draw an analogy to a doctor. So if you see a doctor, all of them undergo basic training about the human body, they know what is where. Right, so just because you specialize about the eye doesn't mean that you don't know how to check somebody's pulse, right? So that's what I would say if there's a DevOps engineer who does not write code. So to me, it's a very vital part of being in a DevOps chain. Yes, you're writing code, as they all rightly said. Probably what you're automating is different. There are probably REST endpoints. If you're talking on AWS or any kind of a cloud setup, you have REST endpoints. How you consume it might be different. UI developer might use an Angular JS or some framework like that to build something. A backend developer might use Java, Node.js, whatever they're comfortable with to build it. But end of the day, they're all testers, developers. Even the testers are actually expected to write code to test. So I think that's a drastic shift. So you have to be open to be a developer is my statement.
Good. I'll also like to draw attention on one very important point, which is the biggest buzzword in industry today. Any answers? Louder. Data science, AI, ML. Now inside each company, which group has most control on data? Now, ops, DevOps. So if you see, in any company, including us, the people who experimented most with AI, ML are DevOps people. Because they had this whole infrastructure ready in front of them, whole logs sitting there, which they know what to do that. And the impact they saw was so amazing that I cannot express in my words. So that's the other beauty of this, because you sit on tons of data and petabytes of data, and it keeps growing. Now it's all up to the innovation and the intuition and then creativity of the engineer in the DevOps function. How do you analyze that and exploit the data? So can you share some of the perspectives, and after that, Sukesh, Prasanna, can you take it up? Yeah.
Before I get to the data, I also wanted to talk a little bit about mindset. When developers generally start, it's most likely, okay, I have this scenario, I want to get it implemented. And it's mostly done and dusted, or people do agile development, they look at requirements and stories, and it's done there. But with this mindset, like keeping DevOps as mindset, what happens is you need to understand the DNA of what you're building. So the entire architecture has to be like everyone must and should understand how this is going to be deployed in production, how is it going to run. If something has a problem with the kind of logging I'm doing or the monitoring I have put in place, is it easy for somebody else in my team also can go and do any diagnosis on it or make a fix to it. So it is about that set of a mindset, like can you bring somebody in and then they always think only in terms of a bigger picture, but actually act locally and make work getting done. That's it. Can the other question be?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that DevOps as a function has a lot of data.
Yeah.
And the biggest buzzword in industry today, AI ML, how does these two fit together? What's your perspective on that?
So as I said, when things get overwhelmingly big, right, no longer human power is enough for us to do anything again and again. So I always follow a rule, 1, 2, automate. That's it. I just don't have any other rule with me because it's very simple and it's been very helping. Like first time I got it, I try to handle it. Second time I know I have to put a schedule in place, like in case it comes again, I need to spend some time to put it into some other kind of a pipeline so that I'll be able to use it. Without this level of automation I think we will not be capable enough to understand even the insights you want to drive from like various things, right? It's not quite possible. The amount of data that is going to get generated is going to be really humongous when we go on in this mindset, because we are always, earlier we always think in terms of let's produce this data in keeping consumer in mind. Now that's not the case. You produce the data, we will see how to consume later. We'll try to draw insights out of it later.
Prasanna, you want to share on this perspective that how will AI, ML, and the new technologies, and DevOps has been the first adopters of these technologies in the group. So how does it go through?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to take an example of one of our largest customers. So what they do is they every time they start from code, the build, right? And any of the things that got built, all the metadata they generate from the commit point to the Jira to the test output, etc. Everything goes into one database, right? And including the log of that build. So you pretty much have all of that goes in the build, and there is no other runtime. There is no Jenkins, there is no what produced, nothing will be there. Every time you bring up, run, put it in the database. So they have a humongous database they have created, and from that they can go back in time and figure out exactly what happened, what are the common mistakes, who's doing. And it was marvelous to see, because we've never seen our product used that way at all, right? It was so big, because we were seeing that the usage is going. How come they have so many things going on? Because they were putting every damn thing that they can produce into one thing, including logs, right? And then now they are looking at how to exactly to your point, how to structure. Get the unstructured data from logs, from the support calls. What was discussed there. Even the voice data are going into one common database. So they're building the data to be able to produce something. Now, how do they use it is still they're evaluating. But at least they learn that the data science is something that they need to invest. For that you need data, and I think there is humongous amount of that is the gold now. Right?
Exactly. So data is the oil or oxygen as they call it, right? So that's interesting. So this some of the things which I was talking about is that's making data DevOps interesting and then trying to bring everybody in the perspective. I'll tell you something more scary is not. What happens when DevOps become DevOps? That you fail, right? And you can fail. Machine can fail, right? Power shut down, some server goes, workload was not balanced. What is the criticality of that? You want to share some example on that?
So I like to start with saying that touchwood, so far we have not had DevOps. So I would like it to be maintained like that. But yeah, I think it's a reality that, and one reason why we don't see that bad in my line of work is, so we are part of a products team and we are into some kind of middleware. So what we build is not getting deployed into production immediately. So we do have some leeway of time before somebody hits us very hard. So there are some gates or checkpoints beyond which we can't deploy directly. But yeah, so there have been instances from my past where I've seen this kind of oops experiences where, okay, one thing I can never forget is one of my colleagues, so it was his birthday actually, and so he said, I'm leaving at 4. So he swiped his card, and I think he just went out of the door, he got a call, something failed in production. He went home 2 days later. Okay, so so that's when oops is really bad. And when they diagnosed, it took them like 1.5 days to figure out what the problem was. And that was actually because the teams are working in a very disconnected manner. They didn't have what they were saying, no access to logs. They had no support from the ops team or the infra teams. Finally, they figured out that there was one line in the UI which got commented in one of the releases. And somehow it just got deployed into production. So this was an experience for me where it said, okay, if you had an end-to-end connected system where every step was tested, monitored, and then taken forward, probably this kind of a scenario would not have happened, and he would have probably cut his birthday cake on his birthday. So that's probably the kind of scenarios that can happen even with DevOps, because one failure, one build server being down, probably you're sitting here and you get a call and you have to rush back to office. So actually we had one more speaker and he had to rush back because of some issue that he had. Yeah, it was an oops moment for him today, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes, so that's very interesting. So that was the other thing which today's connected world and the digital world, which I want to focus and have been the practice of cybersecurity for long, is SecOps. How DevOps to SecOps, the transition, why it is happening, what is the importance of that? So, Prasanna, you want to share something on that? That how important is this in this connected 5G, IoT, or networked world? How's that going?
Yeah, I'll probably talk about SecOps.
Yes.
That we started with oops. I think Steve mentioned this, especially in the IoT space. When a security issue comes post deployment into a device, rolling back is not a joke at all. So rolling back is not a joke at all. So this issue he was talking about in the context of Spectre, but what we were looking at doing is, we spoke about it as well, Divyanshu, is when such a thing happens, the issue really is in the context of the standards missing. Each device carries its own standards, and even the open source world are supporting multiple standards. It needs to standardize, but if there is a standard that comes, I think there are a lot of device oops that we can handle, specifically making sure you have the life cycle process of the device, connecting back and making sure it checks whether it is running the right version, it is running any vulnerability. All those are queryable, but the device doesn't know how to query. I think that is something that we should look at doing. I just wanted to add to what Sukesh was saying in terms of we look at DevOps only in the context of production deployment breaking. But I had a very different incident, because we normally forget the DevOps platform is for developer as well. Yeah. Right. So there was a tweet by one of my friend who said, I took 5 times, spent 4 hours to get the build green, and then realized I actually committed the wrong thing. Right? I think it is a big oops there. Right? So if he continues doing that, he may leave the company and go somewhere else. So we got to be critical of that as well.
Good. You want to share on the DevOps side, on SecOps
side? Especially on the oops side, initially what happened is when we had set up PagerDuty, it was always people on the infra team. I'm specifically using the word infra team because that team is only for doing the infrastructure, and then they did some amount of monitoring. What happened is it used to go down, and then they had to get up in the middle of the night and try to see if they can fix it or call somebody else and fix it. The moment we rotated this PagerDuty into the developer's schedule, like every developer is now will get a PagerDuty on the modules they work, the number of incidents came down. That is one of the key things. Like I'm again talking about this cultural aspect, because people always push it. It's not my job. Yeah. I'll push it to somebody else. But the moment it came in, everybody took care of security very seriously. Everybody took care of incidents seriously. Then I even overheard one developer speaking about like, I have to log this in a structure. I have to log it in a JSON format. The plain text is, I'm not able to query my plain text. So that is a win because it's coming from ground up, like somebody who's facing the issues now suggesting changes. That goes a long way in doing things. And with security, mostly we are going cloud native, which means every communication is always out in the open. Unless this is again built into the DNA of the application, it's not going to work out very well.
That's interesting thought. And so I'll share my thought on SecOps side of thing. Why? Because security was some function, one function, probably 5 years back. Nothing after that. But the amount of breaches, hacks, and then things we have seen, Fairfax, and yesterday there was one. I don't know. I think most of you will be using Linux, right? So the sudo command has a problem, and you can become a root basically. So there was discussion yesterday. So now the time to react is very, very less. So it is humanly impossible to do that unless until you have a process, you have a exactly QRT, what we call in security parlance, quick reaction team. You should have that in DevOps. That's how SecOps can be here. There are two things. One, the patches or the security fixes have to reach to the right audience or the right users. Second, if they're not reaching to the right audience, they should be aware that there's something wrong. Because if there is one box or one device connected to one home which gave a backdoor, the company's image has got tarnished. So amount of focus that company today have on SecOps is actually much more than anything else that I have seen. A feature can be delayed, but a security fix has to be rolled out in the right time, right way, and to the right people. So that was my perspective there. And I work in connected home division Intel, which make Wi-Fi chips and Wi-Fi software. Sometimes it's scary to know that, including my home, there can be 6 million home which has a bug which I know. And sitting inside DevOps, that scares me. One thing that keeps me awake is that if there is a bug, I'm aware there are 6 million homes which depend upon me for that fix, and I'm not given that. So that's the important and how this two functions got merged. The third important thing which I wanted to do that, however innovative a company is, there's somebody, you were telling about Google, right? That they have that every 10 minutes they will release the code, right? And if it takes more than 10 minutes to do a build, put more servers. So however innovative the team is, if DevOps function is not empowered to make it realizable, to live out to the customer, the time to market is out. And the innovation, time in which companies can innovate and put a product is so less now that DevOps has to be strangled at. I would like to hear from each of you that how do you think about that? What is the criticality of DevOps in terms of entire success of the company?
Yeah, I think time to market is something that everyone talks about in great detail today. So if you want to have an edge over your competitor, you need to reduce your time to market. There are no questions about that. And I think DevOps kind of helps a lot in that aspect. A lot of things get automated because of the kind of frameworks or tools that we end up using. Other thing is that you end up re-architecting your applications itself, even in a complete enterprise kind of a context. What is happening is another term that we never touched upon is microservices. So a lot of people are moving into that kind of an architecture because they want to isolate changes and get it up and running very fast. So Divyanshu was talking about connected homes, where for him sending out a patch is very critical because, as he said, it affects 6 million homes. So same way in an enterprise context, imagine you have a banking application or a telecom application that's very critical, and you want to be able to patch it as soon as possible. It could be a bug that's affecting a customer. Somebody is not probably able to make a call. Whatever be the issue, you need to roll it out as soon as possible. Now, what is happening today is because some of the organizations have started realizing the value of one, automation, and two, the ability to break up applications into very tiny modules. They're starting to emphasize a lot on microservices kind of architecture and roll out these patches as soon as possible. So that's a key enabler, and even for a business perspective. So it kind of, customers get confidence. Yes, I think majority of us who are in the IT industry and probably people around us accept the fact that bugs are there. You cannot kill a bug. It'll be there in some shape or form. When it emerges, how quickly does the organization respond to it? I think that is the key in defining customer experience. So one is, yes, you build something that is very good, and two, you give them that experience when they need something, you are there for them and you're able to deploy something quickly. And I think that is where DevOps stands out, because you have a lot of functions that are getting merged, or I mean, even though they have their boundaries and well-defined shapes that they take, still these boundaries are blurred because of the way we work. So things like code review being automated, typically that is something where if you go back 10 years, somebody is sitting and reviewing your code, it takes them a few hours to do it. Today, people do it automatically. And the rules, the quality of the rules so earlier the quality of a code review was completely driven by how good a developer or how good your lead was or your manager was, right? Today, because it's a set of rules that are contributed by a team, and it has evolved from the community as well, your reviews are far superior than what it used to be. So these kind of things help you reduce the bugs to a large extent, and also helps you reduce the time it takes to kind of deploy something. So in my view, having DevOps is probably a very key ingredient in reducing your time to market.
You want to share on that?
Yeah, Mark Anderson had said, I think 10, 12 years back, software is eating the world. We are now in the state where, it's really a fact now. Every company is a software company. I go a step forward and say every company has to become a DevOps company, because software is what, differentiates them, right? And if that is the case, how quickly you react, exactly to what Sukesh was saying, will become the competition, right? So if your competitor takes 10 seconds, you better do it in 5 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to lose business. I think most of the examples we're talking about is around that, and that's, to me, is going to be a differentiator. So there's no question about how critical DevOps is.
I also want to specify a point about concept to cash, like product owners, especially in startups. Thoughts are very ephemeral. They'll have, like, while driving to the office, suddenly some ideas would just pop up in their mind. They want to try it out, and this cycle has to happen very quickly. Like Monday morning, some thoughts come up. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday, this has to go to a customer, and then the customer has to give a feedback. This concept to cash cycle, or like to generate any revenue out of an idea, right? That's what actually differentiates for very nimble organizations. Like, they can try to change their direction anywhere they want, and they try to do it only for a small set of people. Like, the entire website would be functioning as it is, but only a new set of people would actually see a different website altogether. Those ones are very hard to bake in if you don't think about it right in the upfront itself. That investment would definitely be required.
So interesting thoughts and interesting experiences. I hope you guys are getting out of it, and just helping you to make some decisions in your very near future. And if you are a DevOps practitioners, I will ask at least one or two of you to share some experiences that you want to share at this point.
We have a very matured way of DevOps being implemented in our company. So whenever I go for conferences or meet my friends in some other companies, I get to know that they're already using cutting edge technologies available in the open source market. So that way we feel like day by day we get a lot of learnings from the product itself, and we are ahead of many companies in the market in adopting the open source technologies in the space of DevOps.
Which company are you from?
From Target.
Target, okay, I know Target well. So interesting, again, any DevOps movement you guys want to explain without taking a lot of, I think, company details? Anyone who has some DevOps? Yes, one. Yes.
Hi guys, I am from Sukesh's company. Actually, I was part of the team where we tried to set up a CI/CD kind of a pipeline for some 6 to 7 products. So, in my experience, what it what it contributed to my career or something was that I got to know what happens in each and every stages of software lifecycle, and we had to put in a lot of thought, thinking what does a tester or a ops guy face when a developer makes a mistake, vice versa, and setting up it was easy, but the problems comes when something fails. So when the initial stage happened, we had everything in correct spot. It was going well. We didn't have a problem setting it up. But the exception handlings and all those failure handling was this bit which is kind of still a challenge for us. And one more thing which I experience from is that we had a source code somewhere, something. It was not structured or it was not in a proper format, which we had to change because we are using DevOps. Because many of the standards has to be followed. If it's not there, you will end up creating something which can't be used. So it helped the product teams in a way that now if I go and talk to my team, they are saying, okay, something happened, and because of that, we are getting something out of it. Or else we are moving out of some old technologies which we are using or some old practices to adhere to something which is newly or which is more valuable to the product. So we are still in a starting stages, but it's helping our product in a lot of ways.
Interesting. Any contributor to open source in DevOps? That's what Prasanna asked in the beginning. Anybody has contributed on towards any project in open source for DevOps here? Good. So you want to share what you have contributed?
So we are going to talk about the same.
Introduce yourself so people know about you right here.
Yeah. So I'm Hari Chandrasekharan from Verizon. We are contributing to open source solution which is Hygia, which is a DevOps dashboard. Yeah. So that we are contributing towards it, like writing collectors to measure the DevOps maturity. So that's what we are doing.
And and who's the maintainer? You're the maintainer, or
the Capital One is the maintainer.
Capital One is the maintainer. Or Capital Bank. Okay. Interesting. Anybody else who has contributed towards that? No, but so just highly encouraging thing that you. Thank you. So nice of you to do that. Yes, clap for him. Yes. Yeah. So you find somebody who has done contribution, right? So what we need is people to come and contribute more. That will help the DevOps world better. It's a new world and it's more integration, but a lot of new tools and techniques we need. And there are companies which do develop DevOps cool tools. JFrog is one of them, Ansible I know. But a lot has to come from the community. So Prasanna, you want to again stress on how JFrog is helping people to contribute and look for that, or how's it?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that though. JFrog has an open source Artifactory management. How many of you know Artifactory? Just raise a hand. Okay, so please contribute there. Of course, we have a basic open source platform, and there are various layers on top of it. Please take a look at it, download, play. I think the first thing into open source is first playing with the tool, and then liking it, and then trying to fix the issues. That's the model, right? So whatever tool, like you said, Hygia, it's an amazing tool. So play with it, and I think there are various ways you can contribute. Like he was mentioning, writing collectors. You can write Jenkins plugins, or it need not be the core. It's easier, and it will immediately give you value because you can now kind of use it to the extent of customization you want, right? So the various ways you can start contributing, and it feels good. At the end of the day, it definitely feels good that you're giving back to the community. Should we open for questions?
Hi, my name is Sutirtha. I'm from Enquero. This is a recent question that I faced from a client, right? And this is to Vinod's discussion about the mindset and all that. So how do we get developers per se to think about all aspects, not just developing code and addressing functionality, but from an overall aspect, let's say, what happens after deployment, right? After it goes to production, how do you maintain it? How do you ensure that, you are able to release, further patches and further updates, much faster? So how do you think about those? What are those factors that the developers should think about? If something you can talk about.
I would say that it's better to put developers on the spot. Like say you're going to be responsible for whatever is happening to this application. So in our teams, what we do is we specify primary and secondary owners for the modules. And it is their responsibility to think about how this would be used into production. And it doesn't matter if this person is an intern or an architect. Whoever takes up this responsibility would have to do it. It's a must. It's not like you can't get away with it. You can't say I can't do it. So that's how we force people to do it. the word force may sound hard, but it's something like it's the requirement. Like if you want to be in the team, learn how it's going to be operated as well.
Okay, so that's an approach to thinking about that. But what are the aspects that a developer should really think about if
So So from my side, I'll answer the question in two parts. So I was into development before I stepped into DevOps. And I told you that I used to curse them day in, day out. That I developed a feature, it's not going to the customer. The question on my face was, why it is not going to customer? A developer's nightmare is that his or her code or feature they develop could not reach to customer. They feel sorry about it. They feel bad about it. I used to feel bad. And then I started exploiting the same thing with the development team. I told, okay, if it's not in DevOps, it's not in customer ops. So if you want your feature to go, I don't have a manual testing. I don't have this regression and all. You have to make sure that code is on continuous delivery train. Now, developers, as I told you, worst thing is 3 months, they wrote the feature and it's not getting released. It's not seeing the day of life, they feel very demotivated. Most of the developers, around 70%, came on board. They started thinking, no, Divyanshu, moment I take a feature, I will design the automation, design the testing, I'll manage it with Jenkins so that you can get it to the development tested right on. And the second important thing was, once they put into CI/CD, or continuous delivery, continuous integration framework, the customer bugs have come down very heavily. The second thing which developers never like is sitting down and debugging a code which they have written some probably 6 months, 10 months back, and something has missed, and we don't want to do that. So once they are on the CI/CD framework, that's DevOps, then they are pretty much sure that, okay, if there is one or two, there will always be bugs, but it's come down heavily. So there is always something in for them, like night outs, unnecessary, and they can work on cool features which can see the light of the day. That motivates them a lot. And there's a penalty also. There are developers who did not buy in, so their features started getting missed. And one fine day, there was a team, I don't want to take name, in the different company where I used to work earlier, that team was asked to go because they could not deliver to our expectation, and then we have to take the features from somewhere, a third party, and integrate in the product. So that's a big motivation for them. The second question you asked is, can you repeat that? What all aspects of the code? So interesting question. So one of the things is that the code, when it is written, is always written in a development machine. The code which is delivered is always a neat, clean machine with bare minimum, almost as much as close to a customer scenario, right? So developer has to think from that angle, that if this code integrates with 50 other developers' code, it still is valid. Second, it can be released with the minimum time because it has an automated testing mechanism. Last but not least, is integrated with a release mechanism, Jenkins or whatever you want to use, and go ahead with that. So development process doesn't stop with feature getting a standalone developed. That has to be broken. And you are right, it takes some time, but as I told you, the high side of developer is they can see their feature can see the light of the day as soon as possible if they have followed the whole DevOps and Jenkins mechanism.
So just to add to what they're saying, I think some of the key things that they need to look at, and that's where I started off saying, talking about perspective. So things like, what do I log? Why am I logging it? Who's going to use it? So what is relevant? These are basic things that a lot of developers don't think about. They just say, okay, I'll just log pretty much anything that is there. And sometimes that goes against security. So he or she needs to understand, okay, that there needs to be a way to say mask certain kind of data that has been logged. So things like that start coming out. Another thing, I think they were talking about the build and release process. So very often, it works for me as a typical paradigm that we all come across. So I think they need to break that and see, okay, on a test environment or on production environment, what is the infrastructure, what is the setup, what are the kind of hardware tunings that are done, what is your, if it's a Java world, what is your JVM configuration. They need to understand all this and then write code. Because what probably works for you on your machine is not probably going to run on a production or even a test environment. Your hardware size, the kind of performance that you're looking at. So I mean, I deal with one of the products that I deal with is a API gateway. So the kind of performance that I can publish with and without certain scenarios is completely dependent on the underlying hardware. And if I test on my a developer's machine, it might give me 10 times the performance, but on a production setup, no, I have multiple other layers through which the data hits me or my traffic hits me, right? So we need to understand that. So those are the kind of things I think a developer needs to understand when they're getting into this DevOps kind of a model.
I just want to add a little bit. I have very different perspective, unfortunately. I think the whole idea is try to make developer as fearless as possible. We want to help him change code without having the fear of, am I doing this correctly? So that question has so many answers, right? Are you logging correctly? Did you follow your coding standards? Will it compile in production? Will it do this? Will it work in Ubuntu? Will it work in CentOS? All of that should be the platform that taking care. You go change the code. I will tell you whether it will work or not. So the developer should think less, focus on the fix he's doing, and the rest all, it's on us or the DevOps platform or whatever you want to call. That should give the feedback saying, is it ready to go to production? Have you taken care of everything you should have taken care of? Right? Of course, you need to understand all of that. I'm saying at the time of coding, you should not really worry about, am I doing this correct, this correct. The moment you add that, he will become, it's more fearsome. You should make him fearless. And just another quick perspective, to ask, culturally, right, what I've seen, Target does that very well, is, when you want to expand, extending the question that you asked, how do you create these kind of developers, is, I call it the Gandhi principle, right? So it's actually a revolution, and Target has, sustained the revolution for a long time, and many other companies, where you identify these teams who are very good. And for that, you need to celebrate developers. Identify great developers in the company, in the team, and celebrate them, make sure they get the right credit. Because typically, they are the last one to be given credit to, because there are others who can obviously take credit. Once you start celebrating the developers, developers follow developers. So they look up to them. They, ask those questions. What should I do when I commit? He will get the right answer, and that's take them, culturally will help them grow better.
We'll take one last question. I think we are on the end of the session. So one last question, yes, sure.
Yeah. So my question is twofold. One is, what are the stages of DevOps adoption? Number two is, are there any DevOps metrics to measure the success of the adoption?
Okay, so I think I consider, there are two distinct ways you can transform a company, right? One is transformation, which is more top-down, where you put a strategy in saying, phase one, we're going to do this, phase two, you're going to do this. Another one is revolution, right? So I am of the other, not many agree with that, but the idea is, you identify these revolutionaries within the company who are, changing, those are the change agents. I call them Gandhis. They will actually help transform. So you don't need to put a plan. They will put the plan. It's a bottom-up model. And there are, because, the pyramid is, already turning upside down. So that's my answer. And I'm sure there are other perspectives to that. Your second question was metrics. I think metrics is clearly, what do you want to get out of that? Like, when you start looking at, I want to do DevOps, time to market is one, there are various ways to measure, less production issues, faster fixing of production issues, customer satisfaction. I think the various ways, you need to figure out what exactly you want to measure for that, transformation journey you're going through, and then start measuring that. And it is better to have one or two metrics so they're easy to measure, hopefully not beatable.
So I'll add what line I wrote when I took up this function. I wrote, how we do double the work in half the time. And we told, okay, there are no extra resources. So that's very clear. So only thing is that you can buy computers and servers as much as possible. Believe me, that transformed the thought. People started thinking, no, if something, as he told, at 1 to automate, that was the first state we crossed. And we brought automation from single-digit percentage to almost centum. And then we reduced the whole time of release, whole times of CI/CD. The measurement-wise, we asked business what it takes to beat the competitor. They come up with 10 parameters. We took 5 of it, which was on our goal. we told we'll fix it. We started getting money, we started monitoring it, we started showing business. Time to market was one of them. Quality of release was second of them. Repeat customer bugs from the field was third of them. All three we had a very nice say. We started doing it. And last but not least, when we started predicting that how will the release go bad using AI/ML. And today, touchwood, we are the richest group in the company. Lots of funding. Hope it answers your question. Sure, so we will end it here. And because I think Atul and all are standing there and they need the hall. So thank you guys. It was really nice talking to you. Hope you guys get some perspective what we want to share. We definitely learned from you. Thanks.